Chapter 1. Axed by the mighty executioner, his head lay enshrined in eternal darkness. His body had long since eroded and what remained of his head continued to be consumed by the gluttonous pit of the abyss. How did I end up here? Where's the rest of my body? His mind wanders, questioning the unnerving reality. Where's my sword? Did I? Such an abhorrent look, suits you not even the slightest, a devious chuckle echoed around him. Oh my woeful warrior, smile, for it's finally time for you to grace the world with your presence once again. Whak. As his lips quivered to speak, blood pooled into his mouth, choking him off his words. The alluring voice shushed him with a hiss. You don't need to speak, you simply need to listen. Through what little he could make from his dulled vision, the warrior notices a pair of glistering violet heels approaching him from a distance. We made a promise, remember? A promise? What promise? I don't remember anything. Not only the promise but everything of his own had already slipped through his memory. His eyes wander into the dark, trying to spot anything to help him make sense of the situation. However, no matter where he peered, it held nothing but eternal darkness. As the taste of blood finally dissipated from his lips, the ominous figure in the heels stood right before his eyes. The glowing heels were tipped with small spectral skulls trying to nibble on his face like a pair of rabid dogs. Who are you? He asks, his eyes crawling up her slender frame. Don't you dare, not yet at least. As those words fell into the warrior's ears, he felt an invisible force crushing his head against the floor. The pain seeping through his cranium dejected his eyes downwards in an instant. Where the hell am I? Who the hell is this lady? Ah, it seems like your slumber has dulled your memory, but no need to fret, I'm sure you'll remember it all when it's necessary, she said. The phantom force over him quickly disappeared. His cheeks still pushed against the ground and his eyes facing her legs, a playful tail between her thighs caught his attention. Protruding from her hips it appeared long and slender with a heart-shaped tip. Now, there was no doubt in his mind about what he was dealing with. What do you want from me, you devil? With a howling screech, he yelled, trying to intimidate her. Leaning over, she brings her lips closer to his ears. Save your breath, you're going to need it, woeful warrior, she whispers, her bountiful breasts swaying before his eyes. Through the edge of his vision, he catches a glimpse of her glowing red eyes. What kind of demon is it, he wondered, his head pounding with the seeping realization. Up until this point, he felt numb to the pain of his deteriorating body, but that too began to creep up on him. Ack! He screamed, his strained eyes bloodshot from the pain. It seems I can't confine you here any longer, your mortal body won't allow it. Taking a step back, a gleeful smile appeared on her shadowed face. Thankfully, I've prepared a new body for you, one that can last forever. She giggles in a maniacal frenzy while her feet hysterically stomp the ground. Her voice grew louder and louder by the second until her laughter came to an abrupt halt. Her eyes glared directly at the man, grinding his teeth as he fought the agonizing pain of losing his body. What do you want from me? He heckles, his eyes filled with rage. Acn. Don't give me that look, she moans, biting her lips. Her knees squeeze together from his gaze and her hands sink between her plump thighs. Unfortunately, we don't have time for this, your body and your vessel in the real world are waiting for you, she announces, composing herself as she walks closer to him yet again. What body? What vessel? He mumbles, perplexed by the whole thing. That's right, we made a contract. Squatting down in front of him, she continued with the explanation. Although you don't remember it, I have it written down on paper with your mark on it, so whether you want to or not, you are going back to the real world. Entranced by her scent and the clear view of her laced underwear, the warrior felt dazed and his mind grew fuzzy. Even the pain that he felt moments before had started to flee away, but it wasn't just the charm of a woman that had this effect on him, and he knew it more than well. The demon lord of lust, Asmodia. His eyes grew in horror as he finally recognized his captor. Hearing him call her by her name, a faint smile appeared on Asmodia's face. It's been so long since I've heard anyone utter my name. Clamping her cheeks between her palms, she was brimming with childlike joy. I knew I made the right choice when I chose you to be my subordinate. Grabbing the man's head in her hands, she got up to her feet and held it right in front of her face. The man's terror continued to grow as his eyes peered straight into hers. Why your subordinate? Any never. He squealed as her hands began squeezing his face. The contract is already signed, you no longer have any choice. Her nails sinking into his skin drew blood from both sides. Besides, you chose this by yourself, I never forced you. You've simply forgotten your promise and that's no ground to back off from now, is it? Painting everything in a sinister glow, a beam of red light glimmered behind him. Despite no longer possessing a heart, the man could still feel his blood rushing through what remained of his body. At least tell me why I did this. And why don't I remember anything? With an unknown fate awaiting him, he had grown restless and frantic. We had a common goal, that's why, with a playful smirk plastered across her face, she continued. Now, Take care of that body, and especially that vessel. I had to wait a long time to acquire it, so make good use of him, especially his name. As soon as those words escaped her lips, Asmodia, the demon lord of lust, hurled the head towards the red portal. Right before passing through the portal, a glimpse of her face rejuvenated some of his memory. As innocent as a maiden she appeared, but that too was part of her trickery. I remember now, I was executed for a crime. But I can't remember what it was. Go and conquer that sullied world for me, Haruki Shin. Those were the last words Haruki heard as he was sent back to the world that had him killed. Chapter 2. With gritted teeth, Haruki cursed his fate. He had never felt such contempt for the masses as they surrounded him, treating his execution as mere entertainment. The poor, the rich, and even those with reddened nails had come to pelt him with stones and heckle curses at him to their heart's content. Why did I ever choose to serve these fools? Any last words, traitorous scum? His axe held high, the masked executioner asked mercifully. Heeding no attention to the man's words, Haruki raised his head from the guillotine and peered through the pelters. Do they not smell the corruption reeking through these stone paths? Or have their minds been rusted to a mush by their bloody conscience? As his eyes leered at the witnesses, a sharp stone poked him in the eye. Groaning in pain, his eyes squinted shut. Trying to cover his face, his arms reached forward, but the unforgiving chains around his wrists held them in place. Ah! He roared, bringing the cursing and chatter to a halt. Once again, with blood trailing down his cheeks, he glared back at the fools. His mind raced with anger, not at the bystanders, but at his own miserable self. How could he have been so blind? To think, he could shepherd those doomed by ignorance, how could he make such an obvious mistake? You fools! Grunting out loud, he looked around with bloodshot eyes. How can you be so blind? Do you not see what they've done to you? How much they hunger for power? For riches? And land? All the anguish and hatred confined deep inside his soul had begun spewing through his words, and yet as he looked around all he saw were bemused faces. Are they really that blind? Having unleashed his rage, he felt heavy in the throat. With teary eyes, his gaze fell down defeated. What was I even fighting for at this point? He wonders as his mind grows weary. It's not your fault, my woeful warrior, a comforting voice gently trailed into his mind. Your only mistake was presuming that these lost souls ever wanted to be saved. What? He whispered out loud, not realizing where the voice came from. Is that all, traitor? The executioner asked, seemingly unimpressed. Filled with horror, Haruki quickly turned his head and finally recognized the executioner's presence. So be it. Staring Haruki dead in the eyes, he pulled the axe back over his shoulders. What? This time, however, it was the executioner who paid Haruki's words no attention. And with a single swing of the axe, Haruki's name was forever left tainted. Waking up from that nightmare of a memory, Haruki's eyes were dazzled by the piercing bright sunlight. The years-long confinement in the abyssal chambers had even left adverse effects on his new body. Fighting off the pain, he finally managed to keep his eyes open. With tear-strolled cheeks, he scanned the surrounding area. With his body shadowed under swaying branches, sunlight leaked onto his face from the small crevices amongst the leaves. Where am I? He whimpered, his eyes tearing up again from the strain. Laying motionless under the trees, he took in his surroundings. The gentle sounds of rustling leaves and the chirping of birds nesting right over him, it all made him wonder if everything before that moment has just been a nightmarish dream. Wake up now, the illusion of peace was broken by the whispering queen of lust. What do you want? He grumbled with a snarly frown. A few meters to your south the vessel I've prepared for you is waiting, she whispered again, her voice just as swaying as last time. It's best we get moving before complications arise. Her voice was the only proof of her presence, but that didn't make her company any less of a threat. Impervious to her physical absence, Haruki could still feel Asmodia's grasp around his neck. However, at the moment her words were of little importance to him. Instead, his mind wandered off assessing whether to believe the events of his dream or if to take them as another part of her trickery. His memories were what defined who he was, and without them, he felt lost. A foreigner in his own body, or at least the body Asmodia had blessed him with. Holding his hands forward, he gave them a brief look. They seemed as frail as twigs and the rest of his body was no different. What's wrong with this body? He questioned with a scowling expression. It's your true body, one that would never rot or age like the rest of the mortals, she proudly replied. You've turned me into a monster. Unimpressed by the impish look, Haruki spared no breath to share his dissent. Monster? Not exactly, it seems like the memory I forced back into you was not enough motivation, a hint of annoyance reflected in her voice. How about you do as I say, fulfill your part of the deal, and I give you the rest of your memories back as well. As if I have a real choice against a demon lord. Haruki may have lost his memories, but he still knew better than to voice his boorish thoughts about her. Reluctant Haruki picks himself up and begins making his way south. Moving through the dense forest, he once again notices something odd about his body. Protruding from his lower back, a slender tail swayed about playfully with each step. And as if that wasn't bizarre enough, looking down on himself, he noticed the tattoo-like clothes that barely covered his privates appeared to be directly infused with his skin. Am I even a guy, or has that changed as well? He grunted, annoyed by the unsightly changes. You're one of my children now, you can be whatever you want to be, warrior. Although it might be a bit harder for you to do so than the others, the longer they talked, the more annoyed he got at her voice trailing directly into his ears. Every time she spoke, he could feel a strange chill fluttering up and down his spine. From that illusion of a dream, I remembered being a guy, so I'll stick to that. Since his faith in her was near to none, being cautious of her lies was the only option he had. Bending down to his knees by a puddle, he glared at his own reflection, hoping to make sense of the senseless ordeal. It wasn't an illusion, they were your memories, the true ones. I just had to force-feed them back to you like the helpless child you are. As her neutral tone began to vanish, her sense of urgency became quite apparent. You're wasting your time, your memories have long since corrupted by darkness. The only way to get them back is if you follow my orders. Despite Asmodea's promise, Haruki showed no signs of softening up to her. Trust a demon lord? I'd rather bite my own tongue. He mumbled. After all, what reason do I have to live a life of servitude when I have no reason of my own to keep living? He pondered, contemplating taking the easy way out. As those thoughts crossed Haruki's mind, the grasp around his neck began to tighten. Feeling crushed under the force of her fingers, he tried clawing off the phantom hands, but as he had noticed before, there was nothing to be clawed. Forced down to the ground, Haruki was left squirming as he desperately gasped for breath. Death won't be the only thing that follows you into the afterlife. I'll rain down an eternity of suffering on your tainted soul, Asmodea growled before releasing her grasp. See, coward, why don't you show yourself? He spat out, struggling to get back on his feet. I wish I could teach you a lesson in person. You have no idea how much you've disappointed me already. Haruki could feel the disgust in her voice. Where's the rage from being betrayed by your own people? I swear that glare of yours had me flowing rivers. Before Haruki could retort or even comprehend what Asmodea insinuated by the last part, a rustle through the bushes caught his attention. Help, help me. While Haruki's eyes followed the source of the voice, he could hear Asmodea chuckling to herself. Your vessel is here, she whispered. Chapter 3. The dying plea from afar drew Haruki like a suicidal moth leaping into a flame. With no regard for his own safety, he was charging straight in the direction of the voice. Uncertain himself as to why he felt such an urgency to get to this stranger calling for help. Was it the inherent human desire to help the needy, or something more than that? Unfortunately, much like the rest of his memories, Haruki couldn't remember. If that dream has any semblance to the truth, then I might be repeating the same mistake. The nightmare of a dream gave him a slim idea about what could have led to his execution. Despite that knowledge, he continued to blindly follow the path to the stranger's voice. Then why not stop? Asmodea asked with a curious hum. Get out of my head, he grunted, jerking his hand to the side as if to move her away. I wish I could feel that, but roaming around in Atlas is not a luxury I can afford. At the mo, abruptly breaking her own words, Asmodea let out a mischievous giggle. We're here, I can't wait for you to take over him. Her choice of words piqued Haruki's curiosity, but before pushing for an answer, he decided to help this person. After passing through the last pair of bushes, he came to an atypical opening in the forest. Haloed under the sunlight, a tall tree stood in the middle. Canopied under its shade was a wounded young boy, panting restlessly. What happened to him? Haruki charged in his direction. As he made his way over to him, the phantom grip tightened around his neck once again. That change in force let him know of Asmodea's disapproval, and yet he kept moving. Kneeling down by his wounded body, Haruki held up the boy's head to try and keep him awake. Can you hear me? Gently sliding his eyelids upwards, Haruki noticed slight movement in his bloodshot eyes. He's alive. A trail of blood seeping through his silver hair had dyed his clothes in a crimson mess. He may have been alive, but the open wounds gushing out blood weren't far from changing that any moment. Don't worry yourself over a dead child, you must simply take over his body so we can use his influence. Ignoring Asmodea's words, Haruki ruffled through his clothes trying to get a better look at the wounds. However, as he tried to take his shirt off, it got stuck on a broken piece of an arrow protruding from his stomach. Ack! Stop! The boy cried, grabbing Haruki's hand. Please, don't kill me. His teary eyes looked straight into Haruki's eyes. I'm trying to help, don't worry. Drawing his hand away from him, Haruki tried to let him know that he wasn't a threat. And yet his demonic appearance only fueled the boy's anxiety. Taking a terrified look at Haruki, the boy's whole body jerked away. With his heart gripped with crippling fear, he powered through the pain and started crawling away from the demon in front of him. Go away. I need to get to my fatha. Flipping right over the wound, the boy screamed in agony. Wait. This isn't WH. Shut up. Commanded Asmodia. Haruki's lips shut themselves closed as he tried to voice his thoughts, but Asmodia's command on his body was more absolute than his own. Glancing back at the boy, Haruki noticed a crimson-glinted arrow tip protruding from his back. Curse you, demon! Rushing towards him, Haruki's hands instinctively reached out to remove the bloody thing. But in the nick of time, he realized what a foolish mistake that would have been. He'll bleed to death if I take out this damned arrow. Who the hell did this to him anyway? Enraged by the lack of options, Haruki's teeth dug deep into his lips, and with his fists clenched up in frustration he cursed his own incompetence. What the hell should I do? As the boy continued to draw his dying breaths, Haruki shut his eyes closed in hopes of finding an answer. He's fated to die, warrior, there's nothing to be done about it. Asmodia's whispers shattered his chain of thought, leaving behind a bitter frown over his forehead. Possess him, and soon you'll have everything that you've lost. Your memories, your revenge, and if you keep following my command, then maybe one day this whole kingdom will be yours. Unless you have a way to save him, you better keep your trap shut. He growled. There was no way he would simply let the boy die. Even if he had lost all his memories, he still possessed a conscience branded with purity. Following his rebuttal, a dreadful silence took over his surroundings. Struck with deafening stillness, the world itself seemed threatened. Horrified by the sudden change, Haruki's eyes wandered restlessly for an answer, and that's when his eyes locked onto a stagnant leaf floating in midair. Time manipulation. No way, is this an illusion as well? While trying to reason with his current reality, a crimson portal sprang up beside him. Having passed through one such portal himself, he knew exactly what was happening. Breaking the stillness, a hand elegantly crawled out of it. You've rebelled enough, her voice echoed throughout the motionless forest. And like any rebellious child, you must be punished. Finally walking out of the portal completely, Asmodia revealed herself in front of Haruki. Unlike in her domain, she appeared as a mere blob of violet mist that barely resembled her real body. I wanted to give you a bit more freedom, but since you desire to be restrained by those pesky morals, I'll have to punish you for going against my orders. Moving right behind him, Asmodia grabs Haruki by the shoulders. You've disappointed me enough, so prove your worth or be forever bound to his body. As those words trailed into Haruki's ears, he felt as if he had been thrown into an inferno. His lips quivered to scream, but constrained by Asmodia's presence the only thing he could move was his nervous and jittery eyes. What? He finally uttered as the leaves began to fall again. In a matter of seconds, the forest chirped up with life and the colors of the world rejuvenated their beauty. However, for Haruki, the only thing the flow of time brought back was the immense pain of burning alive. Stop. With the fiery pain seeping through his head, he clenched up his teeth to drown his own suffering. I'll kill you, you monster. Hurtled up on the ground, his whole body recoiled inwards. His skin felt charred with molten lava, and so did the rest of his body. Stay away. The boy whimpered, still trying to crawl away from him. The insufferable pain made him forget all about the boy. So much so, that his eyes contorted in anger when he heard his voice again. Glaring at him, he remembered what he was trying to do before Asmodia had butted in. And no. Wait. He requested, his hand reaching outwards. Grabbing onto the boy's ankles, he was freed from the fiery sensation of burning. As if hurled back into the abyss, his vision turned an unsettling dark. There you go, was it so hard to possess him? Now, go on and make good use of him. She tried holding it back, but a gleeful giggle slipped in regardless. And remember, you must prove your worth to earn my favor from this point forward. Haruki felt a light tap on his forehead before his consciousness flew into yet another body. Like passing through a dark tunnel and coming out to a bright scene, he felt blinded for a moment before realizing what great peril he'd be swept into. Another new body. I wonder what happened to the boy. Taking a brief look around, Haruki found himself in the same place as before. The only anomaly was that his demonic body was now fused with the wounded boy. Although the pain from the wounds was severe, it was nothing compared to what he had been through. I need to find a way to patch myself up. Applying pressure to the wound, he started straggling in the direction the boy had tried crawling. I'm sorry for whatever happened to you, I'll at least try to fix your body. Chapter 4. Unbeknownst to the events that followed his collapse at the town's gate, Haruki flailed around on a king-size bed, sleeping soundly as he recovered from severe loss of blood. Watching over him was a demi-human maid seated on a stool at the edge of the bed. Alone with him in the moonlit room, she gets up from her seat to periodically check on his condition. Lord Atlas, please make him well again. With long fluffy fox ears laying downcast, she gives out a prayer to hasten his recovery. Drawing the netted curtains around the beds, she starts making her way out of the expansive bedroom. However, just as her fingers wrapped around the door's handle, her heart fiddled in a melancholic rhythm. Gazing back at him, a hopeless longing lingers in her eyes. Clenching her hands over her heaving breasts, she makes her way back to him with hushed steps. "I'll be back soon, Master Snow," she mumbles, leaning over and planting a gentle kiss on his forehead. Not long after as she left the room, a warm blush had taken over her lush cheeks. Soon after the exchange, Haruki woke up to find himself in an unfamiliar bed. The last thing he saw before fainting was a beam of blinding light that dazzled his senses. Thus when he noticed the sudden change in scenery he felt more than a bit addled. And yet, with little to no strength left in him, he simply lazed about in bed, wondering if he was still dreaming. Is this an illusion again? He pondered, curiously. After what he's been through, the line between reality and illusion felt near to non-existent. Trying not to strain his head, he decided to assess the situation with caution. Pulling himself up, he sat down looking at the open windows. Curtains of silk were bound together, revealing a clear view of a distant valley of mountains. Where the hell is this place? Slipping out of bed, he took a quick look out the window. As far as the eyes could see, he was surrounded by a tundra of mountains. Glancing under his nose, he realized how high up he was. The mere scale of the structure let him know that it was some sort of castle. Scanning a bit higher, he also noticed flourishing villages brimming with greenery and commerce. What town is this? And why the hell am I in this place? Moving away from the windows, he paced about restlessly as his mind strained itself for an answer. While making his way through that arduous forest, he could feel mild pain seeping through him at first, but the more time went on the worse his condition had gotten. That is until he heard rampant chatter bustling in a certain direction. Feeling thrilled to finally meet someone who can help, he charged headfirst through the bushes in that direction. However, as soon as he passed through the last bush in front, he fell victim to an untimely slumber. The exhaustion from losing considerable amounts of blood had finally taken a severe toll on his body. Holding his hand to his eyes, he took a brief look at his pale hands. Once again, he was reminded of what happened in the forest and how he was forced to possess the wounded boy. Standing in front of the dressing table, he took a thoughtful look at his new body. I really took over him, didn't I? Pinching his cheeks, he hoped to wake up from the nightmare. Unsurprisingly, it didn't work. Huffing out a tired sigh, he started unbuttoning the shirt to get a better look at the wound. To his surprise, the deep wound passing through his body was now completely gone. Not even a scar had been left behind, leaving him baffled as to what really happened while he was unconscious. I'm not even going to question this stuff anymore, he mumbled before putting the shirt back on. I should probably look around to find out where I am. Concluding that someone might have intentionally brought him into the castle, he decided to explore the place and potentially find someone who can answer his questions. Looking back at it, from the way Asmodeus spoke of the boy, it was quite clear that he was someone important. The only thing left for Haruki to find out was what exactly was his role in whatever plan Asmodeus had for them. Is anyone there? Exiting into the desolate passage, he called out to anyone present. But the only reply he got was his own voice echoing down the path. As soon as he stepped out of the door, he was awestruck by the adornment on the walls. Drawn towards the oil paintings, his heart ached for a touch. Even the pillars that seemed to be made from clear ice, had deep gold carvings spiraling upwards. Despite the apparent glacial theme of the whole place, somehow Haruki had missed it entirely so far. It feels so cold out here, does a frost dragon live here? No wonder they gave me those thick blankets. Moving along the path, he ran into a maid just exiting one of the rooms. He tried calling out to her, but as soon as their eyes met, her whole body shuddered in shock. Unsure what it meant, Haruki decided not to rush towards her like he had done while interacting with Snow. I need to tell the others, she announced before rushing off in the opposite direction. What? Wait. Even before those words left his mouth, it was already too late to stop her. Did I scare her? Making his way forward again, he came by a flight of stairs spiraling downwards. Descending down on them, he noticed many extravagant display pieces showcased over the walls of each floor. One such piece especially caught his attention. It was a massive dragon-shaped crest looming over one of the many gigantic doors in the castle. I wonder what's there. Although curious, he decided to chase his curiosity some other time. Instead, as he reached the ground floor, he headed straight toward the main entrance. Even as he made his way there, he often found himself infatuated by the illustrious beauty of the mansion. The castle of ice held not only luster but was also adorned with the brief history of its generational owners. Finally, some fresh air, walking into the open garden, Haruki took a deep breath. The air, although chilly, felt rejuvenating. It made him forget the incidents that have led him to this place. Strolling along the stone paths, he admired the lush green bushes. Taking a swift whiff of the tulips, he tried to keep his mind off the tension building up inside his head. Master Snow. A worried voice as sweet as honey called out to him. It's never so simple, is it? As for the name Snow? Is that the guy whose body I'm in? He gave it a quick thought before turning to address the person calling for Snow. Before he could even see who was calling for Snow, a demi-human girl wraps him up in a hug. Her hands squeezed him so tightly, that he could feel her heart pounding through her bosom. Beating right beside hers, Haruki could feel his own heart beginning to match her soothing rhythm. Somehow, even without seeing her face, he knew she was the one taking care of him while he slept. I was so worried, she whimpered as her tears flowed down his shoulder. I. Having calmed down a little, his manly instincts began to kick in. With each huff of her breath, he could feel her breasts pressing against him. Not to mention, her fluffy tail flopping about happily made her laced underwear quite clearly visible. The worst part of it all was Snow's body seemed extremely entranced by it. Even though Haruki tried to push her off, he couldn't lift a single finger. We thought you died, peering up at him with puppy eyes, Asuka got to her toes and kissed Haruki on the cheek. I'm glad you're back, master. Wait, no, I'm glad you're back, young Duke of Laria. Like many times in the past few days, Haruki felt shocked, uncertain, and even somewhat afraid. Duke of Laria. This kid is a duke. Taking a step back, Asuka's eyes shied away from Haruki. And taking a single look at her gave him some idea why. Dressed in the attire of a maid, if this kid was truly a duke, then whoever this girl was had made a grave mistake kissing him in such an abrupt fashion. I'm sorry, I just got excited seeing the young master after so long. With her hands folded over her skirt, her body nervously swayed side by side. But, I hope you'd still allow me to work as your personal maid. Haruki tried not to be taken by her womanly features, but that attempt was doomed to fail. However, reminding himself that he wasn't who she thought he was, he guilted himself into surrendering those perverse feelings. I hope it was him standing in front of you, but revealing the truth would only make me seem insane. For now, I just want to look for some answers. Sure, I'll be in your care. With that reply, he knew there was no going back. Chapter 5. After about an hour of chatter, trying to squeeze out all the information he could, Haruki finally had some idea about the situation he was in. We really thought those bandits killed you on your way home from the Royal Academy, saying that Asuka's eyes nervously squinted. She was obviously disturbed by the thought. Through their chatter, Haruki learned that the demi-human fox girl in front of him happened to be Snow's personal maid since their childhoods. But somehow, a hint of strange chemistry resonated from the way she interacted with him, almost as if they had a deeper bond than that of a servant and master. What am I saying? Squeezing her own cheeks, she looks back at him with a cheery smile. We're just glad you're back, young master. Seated on a table inside the patio, they have both been served a steaming cup of tea. Reaching for the cup, Haruki brought it closer to his lips and took in its sweet fragrance. The odor alone soothed his mind, and a single sip of the delectable nectar left him defeated. For once in a long time, he found himself beaming a warm smile. About the Duke Thin. I'm sorry, she interjected before he could finish the sentence. Master Leonard, your father has already been rested in the royal cemetery. I see, he replied, unsure what else to say. I remember Snow mentioning his father, but he never got to finish what he was trying to say. And now, he's dead as well. I guess that's the cruelty of life. Looking back at Asuka, his eyes were distracted by her perky fox ears. Protruding from her dense blonde hair, it almost made them look cosmetic, and yet their lively movements along with the rest of her body cleared up that misconception. So far, Haruki had tried not to be taken too much by her appearance, but ever so often he found himself staring at her with his eyes glistening in amazement. Master! She mumbled, shattering his train of thought. Leaning towards him over the table, she checked his temperature with the back of her hands. While doing so, the top of her bountiful bosom lay nearly bare inches from his face. And as the alluring odor of her body trailed into his nostril, he could feel his heart soaring like never before. His eyes moved in a jittering motion trying to shy away from her voluptuous assets, and yet his body refused to listen, almost as if someone else had taken a hold of his eyes. You might still need some rest, master. Leaning back into her chair, she held her index pointing towards Haruki. I may have healed your wound with my ability, but you're still going to need proper rest. Of course, a maid to a noble heir was bound to have some magical abilities. With one less mystery left to solve, the only thing on Haruki's mind was knowing how he got here. Still panting restlessly after witnessing the raunchy sight, Haruki tried to soothe his nerves by taking a few sips from the cup. Asuka, how did I get back home? Resting the cup on the table, Haruki squeezed a smile on his face. The last thing I remember is fainting on the outskirts. The guards! She exclaimed, overjoyed by the declaration. The town's guards noticed you by the gates and brought you here. The whole town's been singing their praises since. Is that so? As if his heart's been grappled by a demon, Snow's body squeezed inwards in agony. Master, are you okay? Asuka questioned, slowly grazing his head with her fingers. Ugh. Haruki's mind drifted to the subconscious as his vision began turning grey. Master. Asuka whimpered as she prevented him from falling from the chair. Claire. Marilyn. Someone get here quickly. Master fainted. Calling out to the gardeners, Asuka stayed with her master until they arrived to help. What happened? I thought you've healed the young master sufficiently. The head maid, Rose, was fuming in anger. Do you have any idea what would happen if his condition gets worse under our supervision? Pacing all over the kitchen floor, her heels let out a sharp clank, warning all the other maids to keep up with their assigned duties. Unlike the others, she wasn't young, nor efficient in housework herself. Instead, she possessed a skill the other maids could only dream of. In my many years in the infantry, I've never let a single one of my men fall ill, much less faint, and yet here we are failing to keep the hope of this kingdom from falling from his chair. She growled, looking down at Asuka. The height difference alone made her look like a giant, and having her tower over you as she lectures you over a mistake, was enough fuel for a lifetime of nightmares. Especially amongst the maids she was so fiercely feared, that it had deemed her the title of the hot-headed maiden. I don't know what happened. I checked the tea too, it was fine. Asuka pleaded, straining her neck to look up at her. Noticing the tear marks flowing down her cheeks, Rose closed her eyes to try and suppress her anger. When that failed to work, she drew a deep breath, while the other maids looked at her in terror. Do not make excuses. Despite all that, her tone remained unchanged. I've taken care of a young master long before Sir Leonard took you in, child. I know how hard it can be to keep him well, but that is, again, no excuse for negligence. Clenching her teeth, she kept looking down on Asuka with her dreadful silver eyes. To her, the young master was like a child of her own, and seeing him in pain made her heart bleed a bloody crimson. Asuka hissed as tears began to flow down her cheeks. I'll do better. Seeing her cry, Rose knew she had gone a bit too far. Huffing at the sight, she gently placed her hand on Asuka and patted her head in a swiping motion. The feeling of her fluffy ears brushing against her palm made Rose feel a bit calmer herself. Your ability to heal is why Sir Leonard made you young master's caretaker. Take good care of him. Kneeling down, she smiled warmly, looking at Asuka. He already gets sick a lot, we don't want him to suffer more than he already does. The gentle look in Rose's eyes helped Asuka drive away the tears. Forcing a smile herself, her lips quivered to give Rose a reply. Oh okay, I'll try my best. For the rest of the day, Asuka kept watch over Snow as he slept. It wasn't until the evening that she left to take a quick bath, but that separation didn't last long either. Returning to him with dinner in hand, Asuka stayed seated on the bedside stool, waiting for the end of her master's slumber. However, the night was unforgiving, and so by the time Haruki finally woke up, Asuka had long been dozing off. Back here, hey. He mumbled, staring at the beauty at the edge of the bed. Yeah, I guess so, an unfamiliar voice replied. Asmodia. He thought. No, it replied.